Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The French Quarter's art gallery glowed like a jewel under New Orleans' starry sky. Its marble floors and soaring ceilings dripping with southern elegance. The gala buzzed with the city's elite art collectors in Tom Ford suits, sipping Sazeracs, boho chic painters snapping selfies, and curators whispering deals over plates of crawfish étouffée. At the heart of it all stood Zara Brooks, a vision in a black Laquan Smith gown, its deep neckline and thigh-high slit catching the light on her smooth mahogany skin. Her curls, pinned high, framed a face that radiated defiance, but her heart thumped like a jazz drum. Tonight wasn't just about unveiling her mother's lost masterpiece, a street mural that could redefine New Orleans' art scene. It was about justice. Zara stepped to the podium, her heels clicking the spotlight warm on her face. "Art isn't just paint on canvas," she said, her voice rich, her New Orleans drawl softening the edges. "It's a story, a fight, a legacy. Tonight, we honor my mother, Lena Brooks, whose work was stolen from this city." She clicked a remote and a vibrant mural lit up the screen. A woman's face, bold and soulful, painted in reds and blues. The crowd gasped, then applauded. But Zara's eyes darted to the back of the room. Simone Carter. Her adoptive mother stood there, her blonde hair sleek, her lips curled in a venomous smirk. Zara's gut twisted. She knew that look. Trouble was coming. Before she could continue, the screen flickered, then froze. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as a document appeared, its text glaring: Zara Brooks, evidence of art theft, from Lena Brooks' estate. The room erupted, phones flashing as guests posted to X at art scandal trending in seconds. Simone's smirk widened, her eyes glinting with triumph. Zara's pulse spiked, but she didn't flinch. She'd seen this coming. With a steady hand, she clicked her remote again, replacing the document with a new slide. Emails, bank records, and a recorded call. "This is the real story," Zara said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Simone Carter hired hackers to frame me to bury my mother's legacy. But I don't bow to liars." The crowd fell silent, stunned. Zara played the recording, Simone's voice unmistakable. "Zara's digging too deep. Fake the theft. Make her look guilty." Simone's face drained of color, her hands trembling. "You're lying," she shouted, but her voice cracked. Zara stepped closer, her locket, a Tiffany piece engraved with a paintbrush, gleaming at her throat. "You thought you could silence me, Simone. Big mistake." She nodded to security, who moved in, grabbing Simone as she screamed, her manicured nails clawing the air. The crowd buzzed, X posts exploding with "Hamad French Quarter. Take down Malcolm Reed." A renowned art collector pushed through the chaos. His dark eyes locked on Zara. His tailored tux hugged his broad frame. His presence, a quiet storm. He reached her side, his hand grazing her elbow, sending a jolt through her. "Zara, you okay?" he asked, his voice low, urgent. She nodded, though her nerves were frayed. "I'm fine," she lied, her gaze still on the retreating Simone. "But this isn't over." Malcolm pulled her into the gallery sculpture garden, the air thick with jasmine, the Mississippi River's ripples catching the moonlight. Fairy lights twinkled above, casting shadows on his sharp jawline. "You were a damn force up there," he said, stepping closer, his body heat enveloping her. "But there's something you need to know." Zara's breath caught his proximity, dizzying. "What now, Malcolm?" she asked, her voice husky, her eyes searching his. He hesitated, then cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. "I'm not just a collector," he said, his voice raw. "I'm Malcolm Reed, tied to the same world that hurt your mom, and I'm falling for you hard." Before she could process, he kissed her, fierce and hungry, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her against him. Her gown's fabric bunched under his grip, her curves pressed to his chest, each touch igniting her skin, her hands tangled in his hair, the kiss deepening a wildfire of need and truth. His lips trailed to her neck, a low growl escaping as her breath hitched her nails, grazing his back. "I'm all in for you, Zara," he whispered, his voice a velvet promise. A sharp buzz from Zara's phone broke the spell. She pulled back, breathless, her lips tingling. A text from Kendra Miles. Her best friend and a reporter at the Times-Picayune hackers are still hitting the gallery's servers. Simone's just a pawn. Zara's heart sank. Malcolm's hand tightened on hers. "Whatever's coming, we'll face it together," he said, his eyes fierce. She nodded, the locket warm against her skin, but as they returned to the gala, Zara knew the fight was far from over. Months earlier, the Carter family's sprawling house in Chicago's suburbs was a cold, oppressive cage. Zara Brooks sat in the corner of the living room, her heart pounding as forced laughter and shallow chatter filled the air. The family's annual dinner was a performance of wealth linen tablecloths, crystal wine glasses, and a catered spread of prime rib, but the tension was suffocating. Her adoptive father, Victor Carter, barked her name, his voice cutting through the noise like a whip. "Zara, stand up." He commanded, his tone sharp and unforgiving. All eyes turned to her, her face flushing with embarrassment. Slowly she rose, her hands trembling, unsure what she'd done this time. Earlier she'd made a harmless joke at dinner, pretending to announce a fake art grant to lighten the mood. It had backfired, triggering Victor's fury. "You thought that was funny?" he demanded, his face red, embarrassing us in front of everyone. "It was just a joke," Zara stammered, her voice shaking. "I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean—" Simone interrupted, her voice cold and cutting. "Do you think this family's a joke?" "Zara." Before she could respond, Victor stormed across the room, grabbing a length of rope from a decorative basket. Her stomach dropped as he pointed to a chair in the center. "Sit!" he yelled, his eyes blazing. Humiliated, Zara sank into the chair, her wrists bound tightly as the rope bit into her skin. She fought tears, the room erupting in murmurs and cruel laughter. Her adoptive brother Tyler leaned against the wall, his smirk sharp, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. "This," Victor announced, gesturing to Zara, "is what happens when you disrespect us." The door slammed open, silencing the room. Malcolm Reed stood in the doorway, his tailored suit stark against the chaos, his piercing gaze sweeping over the scene. He hadn't seen Zara in years, not since they were kids sneaking crayons in New Orleans' back alleys, but her bound wrists stopped him cold. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The room froze as Malcolm stepped inside his presence, commanding. He looked at Victor and Simone with disgust, then at Zara, his expression softening. "Untie her," he said, his voice unyielding. "This doesn't concern you," Victor replied, his bravado faltering under Malcolm's glare. "Oh, it concerns me now," Malcolm shot back, stepping closer, his eyes never leaving Zara. "You okay, Zara?" he asked, his voice gentle. She nodded, her throat tight, the humiliation raw. "This is discipline," Simone interjected, her voice sharp. "She needs to learn respect." Malcolm's jaw tightened, his anger barely contained. "This isn't discipline, it's cruelty," he repeated colder. "Untie her," grumbling. Victor loosened the ropes, Zara's arms falling free. She rubbed the red marks, her eyes locked on Malcolm's. He crouched before her, their faces level. "You don't have to stay here," he said softly. "Pack your things. You're coming with me." "What?" Simone's voice rose in disbelief. You can't take her. I can, Malcolm replied, his tone icy. And I will. You don't deserve her. He turned to Zara, his voice softening. Go pack. Zara hesitated, glancing at Victor and Simone, their faces twisted with fury. Then, as if a weight lifted, she stood and climbed the stairs, her steps growing steadier. She stuffed her belongings into a duffel, her hands trembling, the reality sinking in. She was leaving. Downstairs. Malcolm waited, taking her bag and opening the door. Let's go, he said, his tone kind but firm. Outside the cold, Chicago air hit her face like freedom. Malcolm's Bentley, Continental GT, gleamed in the driveway, its headlights cutting through the dark. He opened the passenger door and Zara slid in, her heart pounding. Behind them, Victor and Simone stood on the porch, their anger palpable, Tyler peeking out with a look that wasn't quite a smirk. Malcolm started the engine, the roar drowning their murmurs. You don't need to look back, he said, his voice steady. You're free now. Zara glanced at the shrinking house, a flicker of hope sparking in her chest. For the first time in years, she believed him. The drive to Malcolm's Gold Coast mansion was quiet, the city's lights blurring past. Zara sat stiffly, her hands clasped, her mind reeling. Malcolm glanced at her, his expression soft. You don't have to talk now, he said gently. You're safe with me. She nodded, staring out the window, the weight of her escape settling in. The mansion was a vision. Manicured lawns, floor-to-ceiling windows, a Basquiat painting dominating the foyer. Malcolm led her to a guest room, its neutral tones and plush bed, a stark contrast to the Carters' cold house. Stay as long as you need, he said, setting her bag down. Rest. We'll figure it out. Zara sat on the bed, her fingers brushing the locket. A Tiffany piece her mother had left her, its paintbrush engraving a reminder of Lena Brooks, a street artist whose murals lit up New Orleans. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice trembling. Malcolm hesitated, stepping closer. Because you deserve better, he said softly. I couldn't stand by and watch them hurt you again. His hand brushed hers, a spark igniting, but he stepped back, leaving her to the quiet. Days later, Malcolm invited Zara to his art studio, a loft with skylights and paint-splattered floors. She wandered awestruck, her fingers trailing over canvases. You're still painting? She asked, remembering their childhood sketches. Always, he said, handing her a brush. Join me. They painted side by side, colors, blending their hands, brushing paint, smudging on their skin. Malcolm wiped a streak from her cheek, his fingers lingering, their breaths mingling. Your trouble. Zara Brooks. He murmured, his voice low, his lips inches from hers. And you're dangerous, she replied, her voice husky, her body leaning into his. His hand slid to her waist, pulling her close, their lips crashing together, paint smudging between them. The kiss was fire, her nails grazing his neck, his growl vibrating against her skin. They pulled back breathless. The canvas forgotten the heat lingering. That night, Zara found a hidden canvas in Malcolm's studio signed by her mother. Her heart raced. Lena's work. Stolen hidden. She texted Kendra. Found Mom's painting. Simone's hiding something big. Kendra's reply was instant, digging into Simone. Watch your back. Zara stood before the canvas, the locket warm against her chest. Simone thought she could bury Lena's legacy, but Zara was ready to paint her own story. The French Quarter Gala was coming, and with it the truth. Hey y'all, if Zara's fire and Malcolm's steamy secrets got you hooked, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Can Zara trust Malcolm with her heart, or is he tied to her mom's past? Tell us what you think, and don't miss the next chapter of Doyen French Quarter. Zara Brooks' room in Malcolm Reed's Gold Coast mansion was a haven of soft linens and warm light, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing Chicago's glittering skyline. But tonight the view was a cruel tease, offering no escape from the storm brewing inside her. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, each notification. A fresh wound ex posts, accusing her of seducing Malcolm Reed to secure her spot in the French Quarter art gala. Anonymous threads hinting at stolen art. Simone Carter, her adoptive mother, had lit the fuse and the internet was dynamite. Zara's fingers tightened around her Tiffany locket, its paintbrush engraving a tether to her mother. Lena Brooks, a New Orleans street artist whose legacy Simone was hell-bent on burying. Simone thought she could crush Zara, but she'd underestimated her fire. The gala had been a triumph. Zara had exposed. Simone's hacking scheme sent her running, but the victory was fleeting. Kendra Miles, her best friend, and a bulldog of a reporter had texted hours ago. Simone's just a pawn. Hackers are still hitting the gallery tied to Charles Reed. Charles Malcolm's father was a Chicago art mogul, his shadow looming over the art world. And Malcolm, God. Malcolm, his kiss in the sculpture garden, his confession that he was tangled in the same world that hurt her mom, had set her soul ablaze. But trust was a tightrope, and Zara was slipping. She paced her silk robe slipping off one shoulder, her curls loose and wild. The memory of Malcolm's hands on her waist, his lips claiming hers, sent heat curling through her, but his ties to Charles stung. Could she love a man whose family might have destroyed hers? Her phone pinged again. A coded email from Kendra. Simone's meeting a contact tonight, linked to Charles's art deals. Be careful, girl. Zara's jaw clenched. Simone wasn't done, and neither was she. The next morning, Zara threw herself into the fight, driving to Malcolm's art studio in Chicago's West Loop, a loft with skylights and paint-splattered floors. The space was alive with color canvases stacked against walls, a Basquiat print in the corner, the smell of turpentine sharp in the air. She'd found a hidden canvas here signed by her mother. Proof Lena's work was stolen. Now she needed more. Malcolm was out meeting curators, so Zara worked alone, sifting through his files, her locket gleaming under the loft's soft lights. Her search was interrupted by a knock. Jalen Hayes, a New Orleans street artist with locks and a sly grin, leaned in his leather jacket, scuffed from years on the grind. "Yo, Zara, you good?" he asked, eyeing her stack of papers. "Heard about the gala? You're stirring up some serious heat?" Zara sighed, rubbing her temples. "Simone's trying to bury me, Jalen. I need to find more of my mom's work, that canvas. It's just the start." Jalen nodded, pulling a USB drive from his pocket. "Got something for you. Snagged this from a dealer in the quarter. Photos of Lena's murals, some marked for private sale. Simone's name's all over it." Zara's heart raced as she plugged in the drive images of her mother's vibrant murals flashing on her laptop. One showed a woman's face, eyes fierce, painted on a dreamy wall signed, "Lena Brooks, 2005. Below it a note. "Acquired by S. Carter, for C. Reed. Charles." Zara whispered, her voice trembling. Malcolm's father was in deep. Jalen leaned closer, his voice low. "This ain't just art theft. Zara, Lena's stuff was worth millions. Someone wanted her gone." Zara's stomach churned. She texted Kendra. "Charles Reed's linked to Mom's murals. Dig into his deals." Kendra's reply was instant. "On it, girl. Spill the tea later." Desperate for answers, Zara convinced Malcolm to join her in New Orleans, her mother's city and her heart's anchor, the private jet. A Gulfstream with leather seats and a stocked bar landed at Louis Armstrong Airport under a blood-orange sunset. Malcolm held her hand as they stepped onto the tarmac. his touch warm but heavy with unspoken questions. "You sure about this trip, Zara?" he asked, his green eyes searching her face. "You've been quiet since the gala." She forced a smile, her locket glinting in the light. "I need to feel her," she said. "Mom's in this city. You in?" He squeezed her hand, his voice low. "Ride or die, darlin'." The drive to the Garden District was a journey through memory. The streets wound past Creole cottages and oak trees draped in Spanish moss, their branches swaying like jazz riffs. Lena Brooks's old home was a vision, white columns, iron-wrought balconies, a courtyard bursting with magnolia blossoms. Zara led Malcolm inside, her sneakers soft on hardwood floors, the air thick with the scent of beignets and history. "This is where Mom painted," she said, running her fingers over a faded mural on the wall, a swirl of blues and golds. She was everything. New Orleans soul grit art. Malcolm's eyes softened, his hand brushing hers. "You carry her with you," he said, his voice a quiet reverence. "I see it in you every damn day." That night they wandered into the courtyard, the magnolias glowing under the moonlight. Zara's silk dress clung to her curves, her curls catching the breeze. She hummed a jazz standard, her voice rich and raw, and Malcolm stepped closer, his hands finding her waist. "Sing for me," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. She laughed, then let the melody pour out her voice, wrapping around them like a spell. Malcolm pulled her into a slow dance, their bodies swaying, his fingers tracing the curve of her spine. Each touch a spark, her breath hitched as his lips hovered over hers, the air electric. "Your trouble, Malcolm Reed," she whispered, her voice husky, her hands sliding up his chest. "And you're my favorite kind," he growled, his lips brushing her jaw, then her neck, a trail of fire igniting her skin. His hands roamed lower, gripping her hips, pulling her flush against him. She gasped, her nails digging into his shoulders, the heat between them a wildfire. Their lips met a kiss that was all hunger and need, her body arching into his. The magnolias, their only witness. But her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A text from Kendra Simone's hacker. Just leaked more docs. Galleries freaking out. Zara pulled back, breathless, her lips tingling. Malcolm's grip tightened. "We'll handle it," he said. But the doubt in his eyes mirrored her own. The next day they visited a small gospel church in New Orleans' Treme, its white steeple gleaming against the morning sky. Zara needed her mother's spirit, the hymns she'd heard as a girl echoing in her heart. Inside the pews were packed with familiar faces, elders who'd known Lena, their voices rising in wade in the water. Zara joined the choir, her voice soaring raw with pain and hope. Malcolm watched from the back, his jaw tight, his eyes wide. She wasn't just singing, she was reclaiming her soul. But outside, as they walked through the church's garden, Malcolm's voice turned sharp. "Zara, you're pulling away," he said, his hands in his pockets. "I told you who I am, Malcolm, not some bystander. What's holding you back?" Her stomach dropped. She hadn't told him about the secret she'd found in a Treme archive. A journal entry from Lena, dated days before her death. "Charles Reed wants my murals. Threatened me. I won't sell." The accident that killed her mother was no accident. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't know everything, Malcolm." "Then tell me," he urged, stepping closer, his hand grazing her arm. The garden's jasmine scented the air, their bodies inches apart, the tension electric. His fingers brushed her cheek, his breath warm, and for a moment, she wanted to spill it all. But fear won, and she pulled back. "I can't," she whispered, turning away, leaving him standing among the flowers. Back in Chicago, Zara's fight intensified. Simone's latest ex-post was a gut punch. French Quarter's new star stealing her mom's art wonder, who's backing her, #art scandal. The gallery buzzed with whispers, artists casting sideways glances. Zara's inbox flooded with reporters' questions, curators pulling back. She confronted Simone at the Carter house, the air thick with tension. "You're pathetic." "Simone," Zara said, her voice low. "This ends now." Simone laughed, her eyes cold. "You're slipping, Zara. Everyone sees it." But her smirk faltered when Zara held up Jalen's USB proof of her emails to a hacker named Ghost. "Keep pushing," Zara warned, "and you'll be the one falling." Zara's victory was fleeting. At the gallery, she teamed up with Jalen to trace Ghost's IP, finding a link to Charles Reed's private server. But the journal weighed heavier. She met Kendra at a Wicker Park dive bar, the smell of fried pickles filling the air. "I'm scared, Ken," Zara confessed, her voice breaking. "Mom was murdered, and Charles might be behind it. What if Malcolm's hiding something?" Kendra squeezed her hand, her braids glinting under the neon lights. "You're Zara Brooks, girl. You've got Lena's fire. You can handle a Reed trust or no trust." She grinned. "Spill the tea. What's he like?" Zara blushed, the memory of Malcolm's kiss flooding back. "Trouble," she said, her voice soft. "The kind I can't shake." That evening, Zara drove to the Mississippi River, its waters shimmering under the stars. She sat on a bench, her locket warm against her chest, its paintbrush engraving a reminder of Lena's strength. Simone's lies, Charles's crimes, the truth about her mother. It was a storm she couldn't outrun. But Malcolm's words echoed. "We'll face it together." She wanted to believe him, to let him in. But trust was a leap, and Zara was afraid to fall. Her phone pinged with another email from Kendra. "Charles's contact is meeting Simone tomorrow. Got a name. Elena Vaughn." Elena, Malcolm's ex, the woman his family wanted him to marry. Zara's heart sank. The game was bigger than she'd thought, and Malcolm was at its center. She clutched her locket, whispering to her mother, "I'll fight Mama for you, for me." The river flowed its song, a quiet promise, but Zara knew the worst was yet to come. The West Loop Art Studio was a sanctuary of chaos and color, its skylights casting golden beams across paint-splattered floors and half-finished canvases. Zara Brooks sat cross-legged on a stool, her Laquan Smith blazer sharp, her Tiffany locket gleaming with its paintbrush engraving. But her mind was a battlefield. Simone Carter's ex-posts had escalated, accusing her of stealing her mother Lena's art to snag the French Quarter gala spotlight, and now hinting at a scandalous affair with Malcolm Reed, New Orleans art darling cozying up to a collector. Who's really painting this picture? Art scandal. The whispers in the art world were deafening, curators pulling back, her reputation teetering. Worse, Zara's secret was unraveling. Lena's journal, found in a Trime archive, had confirmed her mother's death was no accident. Charles Reed, Malcolm's father, had threatened Lena days before her crash, demanding her murals for his black market deals. The truth terrified Zara. Could she love Malcolm knowing his family might have killed hers? His kiss in the Garden District courtyard, his hands claiming her, had ignited a fire she couldn't douse. But trust was fragile, and the journal was a ticking bomb. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kendra Miles. Elena Vaughn's meeting. Simone tonight. Charles's old partner. Stay sharp. Elena, Malcolm's ex, was a new player in a game growing darker by the day. Zara's thoughts shattered when Malcolm knocked his presence, filling the studio's doorway. His linen shirt hugged his broad frame, his green eyes stormy with worry. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door. the click loud in the quiet loft. "You've been dodging me since New Orleans." Zara's heart raced, her fingers brushing the locket for strength. "I'm busy, Malcolm," she said, her voice cool, though his nearness sent heat curling through her. "Simone's. Lies are tanking the gala. I don't have time for games." "No games," he said, stepping closer, his cologne cedar and spice wrapping around her. "I saw you with that journal. Zara Lena's. What's going on?" Her breath caught the truth, a weight she couldn't carry alone anymore. She stood, her eyes locking on his, raw and unyielding. "My mom was murdered," she said, her voice trembling. "Charles threatened her. Wanted her art. I found proof, Malcolm. Your dad might be a killer." His jaw tightened, shock giving way to something heavier. Guilt. "You think I'd hide that?" he asked, his voice low, stepping so close their bodies nearly touched. "I've been digging into Dad's deals for years. Zara, I suspected he was dirty, but not this." She shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "You should have told me," she said, her voice breaking. "How do I trust you when your family's tearing mine apart?" His hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks, the touch electric. "I hid nothing about us," he said, his voice raw. "I'm Malcolm Reed and I'm in love with you. Art pain, all of it." Before she could protest, he kissed her fierce and desperate, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her against him. Her blazer fell open, her curves pressed to his chest. Each touch, a spark. She melted into him, her hands tangling in his hair, the kiss deepening a wildfire of need. His lips trailed to her neck, a low growl escaping as her nails grazed his back, her breath hitching, paint smudged between them, her skin tingling as his fingers slipped under her shirt, tracing her curves. "I'm here for you, Zara," he whispered, his voice a velvet vow. "No matter what." She pushed him back, breathless, her lips tingling, her body aching for more. "I need time," she said, her voice shaky. "This us, the truth, it's too much." Malcolm's eyes darkened, but he nodded. "I'll wait," he said, his hand lingering on hers. "But we're in this together, darling." As he left, Zara sank onto the stool, the locket warm against her skin, her heart torn between love and fear. That afternoon, Zara's investigation took a dangerous turn. Jalen Hayes, her street artist ally, hacked into Simone's email, uncovering a thread with Elena Vaughn, Malcolm's ex, linking her to Charles's black market art deals. The scheme wasn't just theft, it was a front for laundering money through Lena's murals. Zara's blood ran cold. Charles, a titan in a Brioni suit, held the keys to this conspiracy, and Simone was his enforcer. She needed to confront him, but going up against Chicago's art king was a gamble that could cost her everything. Zara arranged a meeting at Charles's Gold Coast penthouse, a sleek fortress overlooking Lake Michigan. The office was a temple of power, glass walls, a mahogany desk, a bottle of Napa Valley Cabernet, chilling on a silver tray. Charles sat like a king, his silver hair slicked back, his eyes cold. "Ms. Brooks," he said, his voice smooth but sharp. "To what do I owe the visit?" Zara stood tall, her suit, a tailored armor, her locket gleaming. "Let's cut the crap." "Charles," she said, her voice steel. "You threatened. My mom stole her murals and covered up her murder. I've got proof, emails, deals, your name on everyone." Charles's smile didn't waver, but his knuckles whitened. "Bold words," he said, leaning forward. "But you're out of your depth, Miss Brooks. A street artist's daughter thinking she can take me down." Zara's eyes narrowed her fury. A quiet blade. "I'm the woman who's bringing Lena's art back," she said. "And I'm from New Orleans, where we don't bow to men like you. Step away from the gala, or I send everything to the FBI." The air crackled, Charles's gaze a storm. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said, his voice low. Malcolm won't thank you for tearing his family apart. Malcolm deserves the truth. Zara shot back, turning to leave. And so do I. She walked out, her heels echoing the lake's shimmer, a silent witness to her victory. But Charles's words lingered, a warning of deeper shadows. Back in New Orleans, Zara sought refuge in the French Quarter, where jazz spilled from open doors and the air smelled of bourbon and sin. She'd invited Malcolm to a club her mother once loved, Preservation Hall, needing to ground herself in music and memory. The club was a time capsule. Wooden benches, dim lights, a saxophone's wail cutting through the crowd. Zara wore a silk dress, its emerald hue catching the light. Her curls free, her locket a quiet anchor. Malcolm sat beside her, his linen shirt open at the collar, his eyes never leaving her. When the band struck up Summertime, Zara couldn't resist. She joined the singer, her voice rich and raw, pouring out years of pain and hope. Malcolm watched, his jaw tight, his heart laid bare. She was a force, his force, and he'd fight for her. As she returned to him, he pulled her close, their bodies swaying to the music, his hands on her hips, her curves pressed against him. "You're killing me, Zara," he murmured, his lips brushing her ear, his breath hot. His fingers traced her spine, slow and deliberate, each touch igniting her skin. She tilted her head, her lips grazing his jaw, a quiet moan escaping her. "Keep that up, Reed," she whispered, "and we're in trouble." "Good trouble," he growled, his hand sliding lower, gripping her thigh, the heat between them a wildfire. Their lips met a kiss that was all hunger, her nails digging into his shoulders, the jazz, a pulse matching their own. But a text from Kendra broke the spell. Simone's hacker leaked fake emails. "Galas suspending you." Zara pulled back, her heart racing, her lips tingling. Malcolm's grip tightened. "We'll fix this," he said, his voice fierce. "Together." The fallout was brutal. The French Quarter. Gala's board, spooked by the leaked emails accusing Zara of art theft, called an emergency meeting. The conference room was a pressure cooker, curators in tailored suits. Simone smirking from the sidelines, the fake emails projected on a screen. Zara stood, her voice steady, despite the betrayal. "These are lies," she said, holding up Jalen's USB. "Simone's behind this and I'll prove it." But the board wasn't convinced. "You're suspended, Brooks," the director said, her tone cold. "Pending investigation." Simone's smile was a knife twisting deeper. Zara left her head high, but her heart heavy, the locket, her only comfort. That night she and Malcolm met at his New Orleans loft. The city lights, a glittering taunt beyond the windows. He pulled her into his arms, his hands framing her face, his lips brushing her forehead. "We're not done," he said, his voice a vow. "I'll fight for you, for us, for Lena." His hand slid to her waist, pulling her close, their bodies pressed together, the air electric. She kissed him, slow and searing, her hands roaming his chest, his growl vibrating against her lips. "You're mine, Zara," he whispered, his fingers slipping under her dress, tracing her curves. She arched into him, her breath a melody, but pulled back, her eyes searching his. "I want to believe you," she said, her voice soft. "But this fight, it's bigger than us." "Then we'll be bigger," he replied, his hand tightening on hers. They stood the skyline, their witness ready to face the storm. The Chicago skyline shimmered beyond the windows of Malcolm Reed's New Orleans loft, a dazzling distraction from the chaos threatening to swallow Zara Brooks. The French Quarter, Gala's suspension, hung over her like a guillotine. Simone Carter's fake emails accusing her of art theft fueling a firestorm on X, posts tagged "Art Scandal" spread like wildfire, branding Zara a fraud, a seductress, and now a thief of her own mother's legacy. Her fingers clutched her Tiffany locket, its paintbrush engraving a lifeline to Zara Brooks, whose murals Simone was determined to erase. Simone thought she could bury Zara, but she'd underestimated her resolve. The gala triumph exposing Simone's hacking scheme felt like a lifetime ago. Kendra Miles' latest coded email had confirmed the worst. Simone's hacker ghost is tied to Charles Reed's black market deals. They're planning to leak gala data, pinning it on you. Elena Vaughn's pulling strings too. Elena. Malcolm's ex was a ghost from his past, a woman his family wanted him to marry for a merger. Zara's discovery of Lena's journal implicating Charles in her mother's murder made everything messier. Malcolm's kiss in the jazz club, his hands igniting her, had sealed their bond, but doubt lingered. Could she trust a man whose father might have killed her mom? Her phone buzzed with a new ex-post from an anonymous account. Zara Brooks using her art to scam. New Orleans. Wonder who's in her bed. Art scandal. Attached was a grainy photo from the gala. Zara and Malcolm in the sculpture garden. His hand on her waist. Their faces inches apart. Her stomach churned. Simone was hitting below the belt, and the art world was eating it up. Zara stood, her silk dress slipping off one shoulder, her curls wild. She needed to fight. But first, she needed Malcolm. His promise in the loft. "We'll be bigger," echoed his touch, still burning her skin. She texted him, "Meet me at the gallery. We're ending this." As she dressed, slipping into a tailored Laquan Smith suit, her locket gleamed, a reminder of Lena's grit. Simone and Charles thought they could break her, but Zara Brooks was forged in New Orleans fire. At the French Quarter Gallery, the air was thick with tension. The space was a cathedral of art marble floors, white orchids, a Basquiat-inspired mural. Zara had fought to display a nod to her mother's street art roots. Zara met Jalen Hayes in a back office, its walls lined with sketches, the hum of a laptop, a low pulse. Jalen's locks swayed as he typed, his eyes sharp. "Ghost hit us hard," he said, pulling up logs. "They leaked gala data, artist contracts, buyer lists. Boards blaming you." "Zara." She cursed under her breath, her nails digging into her palms. "Simone's framing me," she said, "and Charles is bankrolling it. I need you to trace Ghost's IP. Can you do it?" Jalen grinned, his fingers flying already on it. "Got a lead, some warehouse in Algiers, but you're walking into a war. Zara, Charles ain't playing." "I've faced worse," she said, her voice steel though her heart raced. Jalen handed her a flash drive. Ghost's last email to Simone mentions, "Elena Vaughn and a big player. Watch your back." Zara nodded, slipping the drive into her pocket. As she left, Malcolm arrived, his presence a quiet storm. His linen shirt hugged his frame, his green eyes fierce with worry. "Kendra filled me in," he said, pulling her into a private alcove, the Mississippi River's shimmer framing them through a window. "Simone's out for blood, and my dad's in this. Zara, what's the play?" She met his gaze, her voice steady despite the heat of his nearness. "We hit them where it hurts," she said. "The gala's relaunch is in 2 days. Every art titan will be there. I'll expose Simone and Charles, but I need proof. Hard proof." Malcolm's hand grazed her arm, his touch electric. "I'm with you," he said, his voice low. "But Dad, he's ruthless. If he's guilty, it'll break my family. Break me." Zara's heart ached, but she stepped closer, her hand on his chest. "We'll rebuild," she said, her voice soft. "You, me, Mom's legacy, but we need the truth." His breath hitched, his hand sliding to her hips, pulling her flush against him. The alcove's shadows felt like a cage, their bodies inches apart, the air crackling. His lips hovered over hers, his voice a growl. "You're my everything, Zara." He kissed her deep and hungry, his hands roaming her curves, her suit jacket falling open. She gasped, her nails grazing his neck, her body arching into his, each touch a spark. His lips trailed to her collarbone, a low moan escaping her as his fingers slipped under her blouse, tracing her skin. "We're troubled together," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "Damn right," she murmured, her lips finding his again, the kiss a vow sealed in fire. But a knock shattered the moment. Jalen, his face. "Grim Zara. Ghost just sent a threat. They know you're digging." Zara needed to clear her head, so she took Malcolm back to New Orleans' Garden District, to the heart of her strength. The Creole home was a sanctuary, its iron balconies and magnolia blooms whispering Lena's history. They walked through the courtyard at dusk, the sky a wash of lavender. Zara's linen dress swaying her curls, catching the moonlight. Malcolm's hand brushed hers, his touch a quiet promise. "This place is you," he said, his voice soft. "Soul, fire, everything." She stopped by a magnolia tree, its petals falling like snow. "It's where I learned to survive," she said, her voice thick. "Mom painted here, loved here. She taught me to fight even when it hurts." She hummed a jazz standard, her voice wrapping around them, and Malcolm pulled her close, their bodies swaying, his hands on her waist. His fingers traced her spine, slow and deliberate, her breath catching as his lips brushed her temple. "You're killing me," he murmured, his voice husky, his hands sliding lower, gripping her hips. She tilted her head, her lips grazing his jaw, a quiet moan escaping. "Keep that up, Reed," she whispered, "and we won't make it inside." He growled, his lips claiming hers, the kiss deep and searing her body pressed against the tree, its bark rough against her back. His hands roamed, slipping under her dress, tracing the curve of her thigh, each touch igniting her skin. She arched into him, her nails digging into his shoulders, the heat a wildfire, the magnolias their only witness. But a rustle in the bushes snapped them apart, a figure darting into the shadows. Zara's pulse spiked. "Someone's watching us," she whispered, her voice shaky. Malcolm shielded her, his body tense. "Stay here," he said. But she shook her head. "No way," she replied, her voice fierce. "We're in this together." They searched the courtyard, finding only footprints in the dirt leading to the street. Zara's blood ran cold. Simone's hackers were closing in, and Charles's reach was longer than she'd thought. The next day, Zara visited a gospel church in New Orleans' Treme, its wooden pews worn smooth by generations. She needed Lena's strength, the hymns her mother loved echoing in her heart. The choir's rendition of Amazing Grace broke her, her voice joining theirs raw and powerful. Malcolm sat in the back, his eyes fixed on her, awe and love written across his face. She was his anchor, his fire, and he'd burn the world to keep her safe. But outside, Simone's lies struck again. An ex-post shared by an anonymous account surfaced with a photoshopped image. Zara and Jalen Hayes, their bodies close, implying an affair. French Quarter's artist cheating on her collector. Art scandal. Malcolm's phone buzzed with the post, his jaw tightening as they stood under the church's oaks. "What the hell is this?" he asked, holding up the image. Zara's heart sank, tears stinging her eyes. "It's fake," she said, her voice breaking. "Simone's trying to tear us apart." "Malcolm, you know me." "Do I?" He snapped, his voice sharp, pain flashing across his face. "You kept the journal from me, Zara. What else are you hiding? The words cut deep, her fury rising. I've bared my soul to you, she said, stepping closer, her voice low and fierce. I love you, Malcolm, but if you can't trust me, we're done. The air crackled their bodies inches apart, the tension, a live wire. His face softened, regret washing over him. I'm sorry, he said, pulling her into his arms, his lips brushing her forehead. I'm in this, Zara. All the way. She nodded her cheek against his chest, his heartbeat grounding her, but the photo lingered, a poison seeping into their bond. They drove to the Mississippi River, its waters shimmering under the moon. Standing on the bank, Zara clutched her locket, her voice a whisper. Simone's not just playing dirty, she said. She's dangerous. Malcolm's jaw clenched, his hand squeezing hers. Then we end this, he said. The gala's our shot. What's the plan? Zara met his gaze, her voice steady. Jalen's tracing, Ghost's IP, Kendra's digging into Elena. We'll have proof by the gala. Simone's emails, Charles' accounts. We take them down together. He nodded his hand, sliding to her waist, pulling her close. Ride or die, he said, his lips brushing hers, a kiss that was both promise and fire. Her hands roamed his chest, his growl vibrating against her lips. The river's song, a quiet witness. But danger was closing in. Kendra's next text was a warning. Ghost knows you're on to them. They're planning something big at the gala. Zara's resolve hardened. She and Malcolm returned to Chicago, the gala relaunch looming like a battlefield. Simone and Charles were desperate, and desperate players made mistakes. But the photoshopped photo had done damage. Artists whispered, collectors wavered, and Malcolm's family was circling. Elena, Vaughn's name kept surfacing. A ghost tying Charles to the conspiracy. Zara met Kendra at a French Quarter dive bar, its neon lights buzzing, the smell of po' boys heavy in the air. Elena's no sidekick, Kendra said, her braids glinting. She's got dirt on Charles. Old deals, shady buyers. If we get her, we get him. Zara nodded, her locket warm against her chest. Then we find her, she said before the gala. But danger struck closer, driving through New Orleans back roads. Zara's Tesla was tailed by a black SUV, its headlights glaring. Her pulse spiked, her hands gripping the wheel. She floored the gas, the car roaring, but the SUV rammed her bumper, forcing her to swerve. Jalen in a beat-up Jeep appeared from a side road, slamming into the SUV, sending it crashing into a ditch. Zara pulled over, her breath ragged. Jalen jumped out, his face grim. You okay, Zara? Yeah, she said, her hands shaking. Who were they? Ghost's muscle, Jalen said, checking the abandoned SUV. Simone's not playing, and Charles is backing her. You need to be ready. Zara nodded, her mind racing. The gala was her last stand, and she'd bring the house down. But Malcolm's face haunted her. His doubt. His love, his fire. She loved him fiercely. But the storm was here, and trust was their only shield. The French Quarter Gallery stood like a beacon in New Orleans' heart, its marble facade glowing under strings of fairy lights, the hum of anticipation thick in the air. Zara Brooks paced a back office, her Laquan Smith suit sharp, her Tiffany locket gleaming with its paintbrush engraving. Her pulse raced like a jazz riff. Simone Carter's hackers, led by the elusive Ghost, had leaked gala data, pinning the blame on Zara, and the board's suspension had stripped her power. Ex-posts tagged "Cat Art Scandal" were relentless, accusing her of fraud, betrayal, and seducing Malcolm Reed, French Quarter's art star, a thief who's her real patron. Art scandal. The whispers in the art world were deafening, collectors pulling back, her mother's legacy teetering. Worse, the truth about Lena Brooks's murder was a blade at Zara's throat. Her mother's journal found in Tree May confirmed Charles Reed. Malcolm's father had threatened Lena for her murals, and the accident that killed her was a cover-up. Malcolm's kiss in the Preservation Hall Jazz Club, his hands claiming her, had sealed their love, but the journal's weight strained their bond. Could she trust him knowing his father's crimes? Her phone buzzed with a text from Kendra Miles. "Elena Vaughan's at the gala tonight. She's Charles's fixer. Be ready." Elena. Malcolm's ex was a shadow in this conspiracy, and Zara was done running. Zara's thoughts were interrupted by Jalen Hayes, his locks tied back, his eyes sharp as he hunched over a laptop. "Got something," he said, pulling up a decrypted email. "Ghost messed up. Sent this from Charles's private server. Mentions a ledger with proof of the black market deals, murals, payments. Lena's name. It's in Charles's office at his Gold Coast penthouse." Zara's breath caught her eyes, narrowing. "That's our shot," she said, her voice steel. "If we get that ledger, we tie Charles to Simone and Ghost. The gala's our chance to go public." Jalen hesitated, his grin fading. "Zara, Charles has security tighter than a drum, and Elena's circling. You sure about this?" Zara clutched her locket, Lena's spirit pulsing in her veins. "I'm sure," she said. "Simone framed me. Charles killed my mom, and Elena's their cleanup crew. I'm taking them all down." Malcolm burst in his presence, a quiet storm, his tailored shirt clinging to his frame, his green eyes fierce. "Zara, Kendra just called," he said, his voice urgent. "She's got a lead on Elena, some bar in Treme, but Ghost knows you're digging. They're planning something big at the gala." Zara met his gaze, the heat of his nearness a spark in the dim office. "Then we move faster," she said, stepping closer, her hand brushing his. "We get the ledger, expose them, and end this. You with me." Malcolm's hand slid to her waist, pulling her against him, the air crackling. "Ride or die, darlin'," he murmured, his lips hovering over hers, his breath warm. Her pulse raced her body, leaning into his, the laptop's hum fading. His fingers traced her jaw, his voice a growl. "You're my fire, Zara." He kissed her deep and hungry, his hands roaming her curves, her suit jacket falling open. She gasped, her nails grazing his neck, her body arching, each touch a flame. His lips trailed to her collarbone, a low moan escaping her as his fingers slipped under her blouse, igniting her skin. "We'll burn this down together," he whispered, his voice velvet. Jalen cleared his throat, breaking the spell. "Y'all need a room, or we doing this?" he said, smirking. Zara pulled back, breathless, her lips tingling. Malcolm's grin unapologetic. "Let's move," she said, her voice husky, her resolve steel. That night, Zara and Malcolm infiltrated Charles's Gold Coast penthouse, a sleek skyscraper overlooking Lake Michigan. The office was a fortress, glass walls, biometric locks, a Napa Valley Cabernet chilling on a mahogany desk. Zara's heart pounded as Jalen, remotely hacking the cameras, guided them via earpiece. "Security's on the move," he warned. "You've got 10 minutes." Malcolm picked the lock to Charles's safe, his fingers steady while Zara stood watch, her Tesla keys clutched like a weapon. The safe clicked open, revealing a leather-bound ledger nestled among contracts. Zara grabbed it, her hands shaking, but an alarm blared, red lights flashing. "Go!" Malcolm shouted, pulling her toward the stairwell. They sprinted, footsteps echoing, security closing in. Malcolm shielded her, his body pressed against hers in a narrow hallway, their breaths ragged. His hand grazed her hip, his eyes locking on hers, the danger heightening their heat. "We're getting out," he said, his voice fierce, his lips brushing her ear. They escaped to Zara's. Tesla, peeling out as sirens wailed. Back at the New Orleans loft, Zara flipped through the ledger, her pulse racing. The pages were a goldmine: bank records, emails, a list tying Charles's deals to Lena's stolen murals. One name stood out: Elena Vaughn, listed as a consultant funneling money to Ghost. "This is it," Zara said, her voice trembling with triumph. "Simone's done. Charles is exposed and Elena's next." Malcolm's hand found hers, his touch grounding her. "You're incredible," he said, pulling her close, his lips hovering over hers. "But Dad, he'll fight dirty. You ready for this?" Zara nodded, her locket warm against her chest. "I was born ready," she said, kissing him slow and searing her hands roaming his chest, his growl vibrating against her lips. His fingers slipped under her shirt, tracing her curves, each touch a vow. "You're mine." "Malcolm," she whispered, her breath a melody. The city lights glittered their love, a beacon in the storm. The French Quarter. Gala relaunch was a vision of opulence, its grand hall draped in silk chandeliers casting a golden glow over tables set with bone china and Dom Perignon. New Orleans elite filled the room: art moguls in brioni suits, artists in vibrant dashikis, their laughter masking whispered deals. Zara prepared in the loft, slipping into a crimson Laquan Smith gown, its slit revealing her smooth mahogany skin, her curls pinned high, her locket gleaming. Malcolm stood behind her, his tux sharp, his Audemars Piguet watch glinting, his eyes tracing her like a masterpiece. "You look like a queen," he said, his hands on her shoulders, his breath warm against her neck. "And your trouble?" she teased, turning her hands, framing his face. "Keep looking at me like that. Read, and we won't make it to the gala." His grin was wicked, his lips brushing her jaw, a slow, deliberate kiss that sent heat curling through her. His hands slid to her hips, pulling her flush against him, her gown bunching under his grip. "Tempting." He growled, his lips trailing to her collarbone, her moan soft as his fingers grazed her thigh. "But we've got a show to steal." She laughed, pushing him back, her lips tingling. "Game on," she said, her voice husky, her resolve steel. At the gala, Zara took the stage, her presence silencing the crowd. The French Quarter. Gala is about truth, she began, her voice rich, her New Orleans drawl softening the edges. "Tonight, we honor Lena Brooks, whose art was stolen, whose life was taken." She clicked her remote and the screen lit up. Charles' ledger, Simone's emails, Ghost's payments, all tying them to Lena's murder. Simone. "Carter framed me," Zara said, her voice steady, despite the tears pricking her eyes. "Charles Reed bankrolled her laundering money through my mother's murals, and Elena Vaughn tied it all together." Gasps erupted, the crowd buzzing. Simone in a corner, paled, her hands trembling. Charles, seated at a VIP table, stood, his face a mask of fury. "This is slander," he shouted, but Zara played a recording. Simone's voice. "Leak the data, pin it on Zara. Charles covers us." The room exploded in murmurs, phones flashing as X lit up. Jalen signaled security, who moved toward Simone, cuffing her as she screamed, "You'll pay!" "Zara." Charles tried to slip out, but Kendra blocked his path, her tablet open to the ledger. "Going somewhere, Mr. Reed?" she asked, her voice dripping with sass. Security detained him, the crowd watching stunned. Zara stepped down, her legs trembling, but her head high. Malcolm met her at the stage's edge, his arms wrapping around her, his lips brushing her temple. "You did it," he whispered, his voice thick with pride. "You're a damn force." She leaned into him, her locket gleaming. "We did it," she corrected, her voice fierce. His hand slid to her waist, pulling her close. their bodies pressed together, the gala's chaos fading. His lips hovered over hers, a promise of fire. But Kendra's voice cut through FBI's. "On their way," she said. "Charles is done, but Elena's gone." The fallout was seismic. Simone was arrested, her confessions spilling in a stark interrogation room. She'd hacked the gala for Charles, desperate for a cut of his deals. Charles faced federal charges, his art empire crumbling, his stock plummeting. The gala board reinstated Zara, apologizing for their doubt, her New Orleans grit now a legend. But Elena Vaughn's absence gnawed at her. The ledger hinted at a bigger player, a shadow behind Charles's scheme. Zara confronted Charles in a holding room, its fluorescent lights harsh against his tailored suit. "Who's the real boss?" she asked, her voice low. "Elena's out there, but someone's pulling strings." Charles's smile was cold, his eyes glinting. "You're sharp, Miss Brooks," he said, "but you're not ready for the truth. Walk away for Malcolm's sake." Zara's hand tightened on her locket, her fury a quiet blade. "I don't walk away," she said, leaving him to his fate. But his words lingered, a warning of deeper shadows. Back in New Orleans, Zara and Malcolm found solace by the Mississippi River, its waters shimmering under the moon. They sat on a blanket, a bottle of Sazerac between them, their bare feet brushing the grass. Malcolm's hand traced lazy circles on her back, his touch grounding her. "You're a warrior," he said, his voice soft, his eyes tracing her face. "I'm so damn proud of you." Zara smiled, her fingers lacing with his. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice thick. "You saw me, Malcolm. All of me." He pulled her close, his lips brushing her forehead, then her cheek, then hovering over her mouth. "I've got something for you," he said, pulling a Tiffany box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, a diamond set in a band engraved with tiny paintbrushes. "Zara Brooks, will you marry me? Not for art, not for deals, for us." Tears spilled down her cheeks, her heart swelling. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his lips crashing into hers, a kiss that was both tender and fierce. Their bodies pressed close under the southern stars. His hands roamed, slipping under her dress, tracing her thighs, her moan soft against his lips. "You're my home," he growled, his breath hot, their love a wildfire. The river sang a lullaby for their future, but Charles's warning lingered. "You're not ready for the truth." The Mississippi River flowed like a quiet hymn under New Orleans' starry sky, its waters shimmering with the promise of new beginnings. Zara Brooks stood in the courtyard of her mother's Creole home in the Garden District, the magnolia trees blooming like lanterns in the moonlight. Her ivory silk dress hugged her curves, its off-shoulder design catching the breeze, her curls free and wild, her Tiffany locket gleaming with its paintbrush engraving. The diamond ring on her finger etched with tiny paintbrushes sparkled a vow from Malcolm Reed, the man who'd fought beside her through fire. Tonight was their engagement party, a celebration of love and triumph. But Charles Reed's warning echoed in her mind. "You're not ready for the truth." Somewhere a shadow lingered, and Zara's heart raced with both hope and fear. Malcolm stepped into the courtyard, his linen suit open at the collar, his green eyes warm as they found hers. His Audemars Piguet watch glinted, a reminder of his family's legacy, but his smile was all hers. "Hey, fiancé," he said, his voice low and teasing, his arm slipping around her waist. His touch sent a shiver through her, a spark that felt like home. "Hey, trouble," she replied, leaning into him, her curls brushing his cheek. "Ready to steal the show?" He chuckled, his lips grazing her temple, his breath warm. "Only if you're by my side," he murmured, his hands sliding to her hips, pulling her close, her body pressed against his, the air crackling his fingers, tracing the curve of her spine, each touch igniting her skin. She tilted her head, her lips grazing his jaw, a soft moan escaping. "Keep that up, Reed," she whispered, her voice husky. "And we're skipping this party." His growl was low, his lips brushing her neck, a slow, deliberate kiss that sent heat curling through her. "Tempting," he said, his hands roaming lower, gripping her thighs, her dress bunching under his touch. Their lips met a kiss, deep and hungry, her nails digging into his shoulders, the magnolias, their only witness. But laughter from the courtyard snapped them apart, Kendra Miles' voice cutting through. "Y'all gonna save some of that for the wedding or what?" she teased, her braids glinting under the fairy lights, a glass of Sazerac in hand. Zara laughed, stepping back but keeping Malcolm's hand in hers. "Jealous, Ken?" She shot back, her eyes sparkling. "Girl, I'm just trying to keep this PG," Kendra replied, winking. "Get your fine self to the stage. It's speech time." The courtyard was transformed into a southern dream, tables draped in white linen mason jars filled with wild flowers and fairy lights strung between the magnolias. A gospel choir from New Orleans' Trimy Church stood ready, their voices warming up with soft hums of "Oh Happy Day, Guests." Mingled Kendra in a vibrant yellow dress, Jalen Hayes in a tailored suit, his locks neat, and a few Chicago art moguls, their Tom Ford threads a nod to the world Zara had conquered. The air smelled of gumbo and magnolia, the laughter mingling with the strum of a guitar. Zara took the microphone, her gaze sweeping the crowd, friends, family, and locals who'd known Lena Brooks. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice clear and warm, her New Orleans drawl wrapping around them. "This ain't just about me and Malcolm. It's about roots, about fighting for what's right, about building a future from love and grit." She paused, her hand brushing the locket, tears pricking her eyes. "My mom, Lena Brooks, taught me to paint my truth, to stand tall no matter the storm. Simone Carter and Charles Reed tried to steal that, but they failed. Because of y'all, because of jazz, gospel, and a whole lot of Southern soul, we won." The crowd cheered, clapping and whistling, the choir humming in harmony. Malcolm stepped beside her, his arm around her waist, his eyes shining with pride. "Zara's the fiercest woman I know," he said, taking the mic, his voice thick. "She's my partner, my fire, and I'm damn lucky to be hers. So here's to her, to us, and to a future where we keep fighting for what matters." The applause was thunderous, glasses raised in a toast. Zara's heart swelled, but Charles's warning lingered a shadow. She couldn't shake. She caught Jalen's eye across the courtyard, his subtle nod, a reminder he was tracing. Elena Vaughn's digital footprint. Zara forced a smile, refusing to let fear steal this moment. Later, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of peach and lavender, Zara and Malcolm slipped away to the Mississippi River. The water sparkled, its gentle flow a balm for their scars. They sat on a blanket, a bottle of Napa Valley Chardonnay between them, their bare feet brushing the grass. Malcolm's hand traced lazy circles on her back, his touch grounding her. "We did it," Zara said, her voice soft, her eyes on the river. "Simone's gone. Charles is down. Mom's art is back. We're free." Malcolm's hand stilled his gaze, searching hers. "But you're still carrying something," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Talk to me, Zara." She hesitated, then pulled a crumpled note from her pocket, slipped under the loft door. Days ago, Charles was just the start. Watch your back." "This came after the gala," she said, handing it to him. "Elena's out there, and someone bigger's pulling strings." Malcolm's jaw tightened as he read the note, his hand crumpling the edge. "We'll find them," he said, his voice fierce. "Whoever it is, they don't get to touch you, not our future." He pulled her into his arms, his lips brushing her forehead, then her cheeks, then crashing into hers, a kiss that was both comfort and fire. Her hands slid up his chest, her fingers curling into his shirt, his growl vibrating against her lips. His hands roamed, slipping under her dress, tracing her thighs, her moan soft against his lips. "You're my home." "Zara," he whispered, his breath hot, their love a wildfire under the southern stars. She melted into him, her body arching her breath, a melody. "And you're mine," she murmured, her lips, finding his, the kiss slow and searing. The river's song wrapping around them, but the note's warning lingered, a quiet call to keep fighting. In the weeks that followed, Zara and Malcolm rebuilt their world. The French Quarter Gala soared its new street art platform, a global hit. Zara's name on art forums, artists to watch as a trailblazer. They founded the Zara Brooks Foundation, a charity supporting black artists, its first grant rebuilding the Treme Church where Zara had found solace. Simone's trial ended with a 7-year sentence, her confession broadcast on every major network. Charles faced federal prison, his empire crumbling, his final words to Malcolm, a grudging respect. "She's more than I gave her credit for." But Elena Vaughn haunted Zara. Jalen traced her to a burner phone in Miami, its owner, a ghost. The ledger hinted at a network of art elites, their names buried in encrypted codes. Zara hadn't cracked. She shared her fears with Malcolm one evening in the Creole home's kitchen, the smell of cornbread baking her hands, kneading dough, a habit from her grandmother. "What if it's not over?" she asked, her voice quiet, her fingers dusted with flour. Malcolm stood behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his chin on her shoulder. "Then we face it together," he said, his voice steady. "You took down Charles Simone and their lies. Whoever's left, they're no match for you." His lips brushed her neck, a kiss that tasted of promise and cornbread. His hands sliding to her hips, pulling her close. She turned her hands, framing his face, her eyes searching his. "You really believe that?" His grin was wicked, his lips crashing into hers, deep and hungry, her body pressed against the counter. "I'd bet my life on it," he growled, his fingers slipping under her shirt, tracing her curves, her moan soft against his lips. The kitchen faded their love, a wildfire, but she pulled back, her smile soft. "We've got a party to plan," she said, her voice husky. The engagement party wasn't enough for Zara. She wanted to seal their love where it began, in the heart of her roots. On a crisp evening, she led Malcolm to a magnolia field behind the Creole home, the trees aglow with fairy lights, the Treme choir's voices rising in "Stand by Me." Zara wore a simple white dress, her curls free, the locket shining at her throat. Malcolm, in a linen suit, looked at her like she was the only star in the sky. "This is our start," Zara said, her voice thick, her hand in his. "Not with lies, not with deals, but with us. Real, raw, forever." Malcolm's eyes glistened, his hand tightening around hers. "You're my everything." "Zara," he said, his voice raw. "My home, my fire, my future." They exchanged vows under the magnolias, not a wedding, but a promise, their words weaving a bond stronger than any storm. The choir sang. The petals fell, and Zara felt Lena's presence. Her love eternal. She'd made her mother proud, and with Malcolm by her side, she'd face any shadow. As they danced under the stars, his hands on her hips, her body pressed to his. Their lips met a kiss slow and searing, his growl vibrating against her skin. "I'll love you through every storm," he whispered, his fingers tracing her spine, her breath a melody. The field glowed their love, a beacon, but the note's warning lingered, a quiet call to keep searching. For now, Zara chose Malcolm, the magnolias, and the life they'd build.